Hello everybody, and thank you for that lovely welcome. I am terrified. The nature of my work is, I'm Beth Hill. The nature of my work is that usually I'm advocating for other people and their creative process. So sometimes when I'm put in these positions, it makes me feel really, really nervous, but I'll probably end up talking way too much because once I get started, you can't stop me. Okay, so I'm going to click. Okay, so justice. When I was asked to sort of look at, giving a talk on the theme of justice, I was thinking, where am I going to go with this? Because I just live my job, it's what I do, and, how would you... and I looked at justice and I thought, well, justice is about being impartial, and that's something I'm not. So how can I talk about impartiality? So I thought, well, really, in my line of work, it's about justice has been served as far as the system is concerned and the community and victims of crime are concerned. So then I needed to look at empathy because really, for me, justice and empathy are hand in hand. Okay. Oh, by the way, those are my tattoos, my keys on my arm. Okay. Right, so I put this picture here. This is one of the artworks that's made by one of our wonderful artists on site. And the reason I chose to put this as my first shot is it reminds me of Northland, where I live, but also reminds me of home because I'm Welsh. I don't sound Welsh, I sound really English, but I'm born to Welsh parents and grew up in a very Welsh household in a very English town, which gave me a real sense of otherness growing up, which is something that becomes very relevant to my work. And that's me. That's me when I was, I think, 5. And the reason I put this picture in was because when I was 5, I'd started school and I was quite a chirpy little character, quite joyful, quite easy to be around. And then a terrible thing happened in my family. My brother died. And it changed everything for me, and I went from being a very confident, outgoing little girl to being someone who was quite nervous and shy, and unfortunately that's when anxiety kicked in, which I have, which lots of us do, and I'm quite high functioning. I'm able to go out and get on with things in public spaces, but inside I'm just like, dying. And when he died, I spent the rest of my life looking for lost boys. And I have obviously found them now. And I had a real thing for Peter Pan, and I used to say to my mum, Mum, I want to go and live in Neverland. And she would say, darling, one day you will. And I got on the wrong plane and ended up in New Zealand. And I brought my 2 sons and my then husband with me. My son Archie is here now. So we came to New Zealand in 2004, but obviously that's kind of halfway through my story because I'm quite old, I'm nearly 50. And we arrived when I was in my early 30s, and Archie was 1 year old. Previous to that, I had gone through the school system and failed miserably. I was good at art and I was good at drama. Everything else was a foreign language to me. I couldn't achieve academically. I went through school, I might have to click now. Went through school and was very, very quiet until hormones kicked in, and then I became trouble. So I was naughty. I was one of the naughty kids at school, but really more than anything, I was a daydreamer. I just used to sit in the class, looking out the window, wishing I was somewhere else, or literally being somewhere else. I stopped attending school pretty much by the time I was 14. I was a truant. I was lucky I came from a white middle-class background, so back in those days people didn't bother my family. If I'd been a different colour and lived in a different street, things would have been very different. So I managed to go under the radar. By the time I got to school CE age, I pretty much went to school 1 day a week, and when I did I was probably drunk, if I'm honest. Pretty sad. Smoked loads of fags, still do a bit of that. And then I was expelled at 16. When I was expelled at 16, I left with 2 C-grade exams under my belt and a real chip on my shoulder. I ended up becoming that person there, who is called Bunty. I've been Bunty growing up all my life, and it was a joyful thing to be Bunty. That was my family name, and I felt safe with that. But Bunty became a bit of a devious character. And moving on. I became someone who worked really hard because I had to. I left home at 16. I ended up living in a house with 3 guys who were way, way older than me, who did every drug, drank everything, did everything, and I followed on that trip and moved to London. I've done loads of jobs in my time, and this is something my granny used to say about me: stick a broom up her bum and she will sweep the floor at the same time, because I was always busy. And everything I did, I put my whole heart and soul into. I'm passionate about everything I do. You know, I never half do anything, and unfortunately for me that does mean that sometimes people suffer. Like, my kids have had to watch me running around the place doing things for other people and just follow along for the ride. So thank you, Archie. So that's me and my dad. So he's quite important in this story. So when I was, that's taken when I was, I just had my first boy, and I think I was 25 years old. Nearly 26, something like that. My dad's really important in my story because I worked for years. I worked in recruitment, I've worked in retail, I've worked in catering. Eventually, just before Archie came along, I was in recruitment again. I had a catering business with a friend. I've done everything and anything. Moved to New Zealand, became a swim coach. Loved that. Worked for 5 years as a swim coach and a water fitness instructor. Kept me really busy, and I was dead slim then. It was great. Archie was little, and he used to come and sit on the side of the pool as a little baby and throw himself in every now and then. I'd have to hook him out and put him up on the side while I was teaching the class. And then I went and I had a phone call saying my dad was dying. And it changed everything for me. I jumped on a plane, went back, and for many years I hadn't really spent a lot of time with my dad. That's one of the few photos I've got of us together, and it was taken years ago. And when I was 39 years old when this happened, went back, and my dad pulled me to one side, and we were having I was drinking a lot, and he wasn't, because he wasn't very well. And he just said to me, darling, you know, what are you doing? It's time to make some change. Go to art school. He said, you should have gone years ago, go. So I did. I came back on the plane. We were lucky enough in Kirikiri, we lived in Waipapa, that there was an organisation called North Tech, or a polytechnic, and they had a Bachelor of Applied Arts. And because I was a mum to 2 young boys, that was the best I could do. That was my uni experience. So I went to Kirikiri, and I studied Bachelor of Applied Arts, and I worked. I worked hours and hours. I worked weekends in the New World, and I worked in a daycare from 2 o'clock every day. So I just went hard out so I could get my degree, and I got my degree. And it was one of the greatest achievements of my whole life, to find myself in a position where I had achieved a degree. I'll be honest with you, not very academic, because it was an applied arts degree, but I did have to write some essays, and I had to do a lot of study, and I came top of my class. I just thought I'd put some pictures of my degree show in. So I made installations, and I was not waving, I was drowning, as a reference obviously to Stevie Smith, the poet. And I absolutely love poetry too, I write. So I made an installation. Am I clicking at the right place? Yep. I worked with photocopying. I sort of broke all the rules. I was told, that we were supposed to be working. Printmaking's my bag. I love printmaking. So I worked with the idea of printmaking as a 3-dimensional form, as well as using photocopiers, woodcuts, etching, but mainly, having learned how to do everything properly, I just did everything half-ass. Well, what someone would call half-ass, but I just loved it. And that is Archie there. So I wrapped my boys up in sellotape, put them in a room with loads of bubble wrap and loads of weird pictures and TV and butcher's hooks, and it was just a nightmare. But that my poor little boy kept him still because he's very hyperactive too, and it was probably the stillest he's been in his whole life. And yes, so I got my degree. So this is where the story changed for me, and we talk about actually now what I do. I had an arts tutor called Sandra Harvey, who was my glass tutor, because I did study cast glass. And she was a really amazing lady. She still is. And she phoned me up in 2013. I'd finished my course, and I said to my then husband, I said, I will get a job that will pay the mortgage. And he looked at me like, this is the arts. We all know that one. It's like, really? And she called me 6 months after I finished my course and said, hey, I've got some work going at NARFA. I think you'd be perfect for it. I've had a few people come through, but I phoned up North Tech and spoke to the leader of the arts programme, Ali Ritchie, and she said the person you should call is Beth Hill. So I went in. I didn't know what to expect. Like most people, I was terrified. Going into a prison is not really the most comfortable experience first time round. Just the checks to get through the gate. It's like going through an airport, but even worse, because you know that you're not going on holiday on the other side. And so anyway, got in there and went into this classroom with this group of men who were very quietly working away at some tables, and fell in love in that moment, and spent a couple of hours there, left and cried all the way home. And the tears were tears of rage, were tears of empathy, and probably a little bit of relief that wasn't me, because it so easily could have been at one time in my life. And that's Sandra there. So I went to work for Sandra, and I delivered self-directed learning for her and a little bit of art, the tiniest bit of art with the young adults. And I loved it. And I was there for 1.5 years working with Sandra until she got taken very, very sick. And we are contractors, by the way. I don't work for corrections. They contract me to come in and deliver the programme. So I was subcontracting for Sandra. So when Sandra got very sick, it was an instant catastrophic thing that happened. And the next day I thought, what can I do? I wanted to honour what she had been doing, because she had a real vision. We'd been speaking at the weekend about where we could take the programme and what we could do on the site. And the arts programme was really very small then. There was only a delivery of probably about 25 hours a week of art on site. We now deliver 75. So I went in and spoke to the contracts manager the next morning and said, look, we can't let this go. What do we do? And he said, just stay, we'll make it work. So I stayed and I worked. I got paid for 3 weeks, and then I actually worked for quite a long time for free. And in the time I took over the contract, I upped it pretty much with immediate effect to 40 hours a week, by looking at different ways I could engage more men with the arts on site. So that's how I got there. How am I doing for time? Sorry, because I do go on.
No, you're great.
Okay, all right. So this is one of my funny artworks. Now, these days, I make art when I'm in the prison. I don't tend to make art at home. I don't have the emotional energy to do so all the time. I find it really, really hard to get out of work, go home, make some art. So I make it in the classroom with the men, and so whatever's going on at the time is what I make the work about. So this one's called Radical Empathist. So I believe that anyone who works in the justice system within creativity is someone who's capable of radical empathy, because no matter what somebody has done, and this is where justice comes into it, you have to be in a position where you can step outside of all your core beliefs about crime, about victims of crime, because at the end of the day, those are the people we've got to be really mindful of. But what we've got to be mindful of is community and releasing people back. So the only way you can engage with some of the cohort I work with is to be able to step outside of that and to see them as human beings, which is what people don't do. Very often prisoners are just people in a newspaper and you turn over the page. Because unless you have experience of living, loving, or working with somebody who's been involved in the corrections system, it's just something you don't even want to think about. And I engage every day with people who come into prison who were those people. And then the minute they come in and either work in there or find themselves in the position of being a prisoner, suddenly it changes everything, and they start to be able to practice radical empathy. Okay, so this is where I bring the men into it. So I'll start to talk about a little about our programmes. So on site, what we deliver at the moment is we deliver performing arts, which is a programme called Redemption Performing Arts. And that started as Shakespeare Behind Bars in 2015. I was lucky enough to attend a workshop with Kurt Toftland, and it was organised by Peter O'Connor, Jackie Moyes from Arts Access Aotearoa, and several other marvellous people that I can't remember the names of. And we had attended a workshop in Auckland, and it was an incredible experience. So we learned how to form a circle of restorative justice within a performing arts space. And let's say we learned it in a day. You can't learn anything like that in a day. And having spoke to Kurt Toftland, who's really quite successful in his field, about it, they decided they wanted to take his workshop into a prison environment, and the only place they knew that they could do it was in the safety of NRCF, Northern Region Corrections Facility, where we operate my programmes from, because it's about establishing safe creative spaces and relationships with the corrections team. So we brought Kurt Toftland up to NAFA, and I found 15 men who were all very long servers, because that's one of our things we like to do, is support long serving men in prison. And we brought them into the space, and they were just like, my God, what are we doing? I said, please come. And they were like, do we have to, Bethy? I'm like, please, just give it a shot. It's going to be worth it. So we did a 3-day workshop, and in that 3 days, they came out at the end with a very short performance based on To Be or Not to Be by Hamlet, very much directed by Kurt and his team, but with a little element of self-direction from them, which is what I was looking for. Because for me, my programmes are their programmes. It's about directing what they do, and it's about having their own agency. So we carried on with the Redemption Performing Arts, and we did it on a Friday, and we have a long lock on the prison, where the prison's shut down between 11 o'clock and 3 o'clock for staff training and long lunch. So we operate then, and we're really lucky because it means that everyone else on the site is locked down. So obviously my programme's quite popular because suddenly you've got these guys going, hey, where were you today, bro? Oh, well, we were just with Beth down in Redemption Performing Arts. Why weren't you locked down? Well, we're just dancing around and doing some silly stuff down there and having a good old gas and lunch together. Oh, right, great, I want to join. So that's how it always starts. Oh, let's go down because she's all right, and they get to be off on the long log. But then it turns into this wonderful, wonderful experience where we create a whānau in there, and it's the most important aspect of what we do, because prison is so dehumanising, and the men have very strong relationships within the units, but you have lots of different gangs, you have lots of different people with different levels of offending and on different time processes that they're going to be in the system. But very often, it's just dehumanising. People, have big issues. So when we bring them down there, we create this beautiful circle and a whānau, and it's a circle of trust. And, that sounds very fluffy, but when you're dealing with men who don't trust anybody and have very little faith in the system they're in and very little faith in the community they came from, to establish that circle of trust is one of the most valuable things we can do for them. And also then what we do is we try and bring whānau and staff within to that circle of trust, and they have to be invited. So most programs on the site are scheduled. So a case manager or a manager or a corrections member of staff will recommend people for a program and they'll put on into it. With this, we don't involve anyone like that. It's about the men choosing who comes, and it's not based on whether they like him or think he's good for a couple of packets of biscuits. It's about whether they feel we can support and help them. So by bringing them into that circle, that's really the essence of it. It's about building this this whānau within the prison community. And then we do plays as well, so there is a bit of a creative aspect to it. So we workshop, we work hard, really, really hard, and we put on several performances a year. And we bring whānau in, we bring local community, stakeholders, business owners, people in the creative industries up north, because really that's who we need, because we want to help our guys to have sustainable relationships on the outside when they're released. So our most recent play, because now we're called Redemption Performing Arts, not Shakespeare Behind Bars. We felt Shakespeare Behind Bars was really limiting to us and was limiting who was coming to join us too, because Shakespeare is not something a lot of our guys will really connect with. So the redemption thing, the guys were really happy when we went with my business name and changed it, and they felt it gave them more ownership too, because they're really proud of being part of Redemption. So our last performance that we did was around Captain Harding Leaf, who was the great uncle of one of the men in my team. So they wanted to do something for Anzac for the longest time, and one of the reasons behind that was two of our guys in the group had written this incredible song around Gallipoli. And it was 2 years before, and they kept saying, we really need to do something with this, and we really want to bring people in, and we really want to remember our whānau and the community from the Hokianga. And we were like, okay, so how do we do it? So we workshopped, and we started I was looking online and finding out all about their different ancestors for them. And this guy, Harding Leaf, he just kept jumping out at us all because he was such a renegade. And he was a bad man, but he was a good man, and he really rose up through the ranks of the 28th Māori Battalion. So we made this incredible performance about him, and one of the guys wrote a haka that was about the 28th Māori Battalion. There were 2 songs written. We used cultural dance, we used incredible performing arts like tools like creating tableaus. There was dialogue, there was a script written by one of the guys, there was poetry, and it's every person who's come to see it, I don't think we've ever had a dry eye leave. And we did our last performance a few weeks ago, and it was on Māori TV, a little element of it. It made them proud. And what it did was as well, was it made the whānau proud. And we reconnected this one particular guy, shines out who we reconnected, because his whānau, he's a gang leader. He's someone who's been in and out of prison for many years. He's re-embraced his culture. His whānau have welcomed him back. He's got so much more support for when he's released, and it's helped him through his pathway through the prison, where he's always, because he's been quite well known in there, it's like no progress, no progress, no progress. As soon as he joined this program, things started to change for him, because people could see him as a role model, could see the hard work he was putting in, and he's moved from being in one of the normal units to being in more of a residential unit. He's working, he's progressing daily, and his whānau are heavily involved in his release plan now, whereas before that wouldn't have happened. So I'm very proud of him, because at the end of the day, I can go around waving my hands in the air and asking people to get involved, but they have to be committed, they have to buy in. And as you probably all know, being creatives as well, most people just think we are fluffy. Most people who don't understand, I'm not a Harry Potter fan, I believe the world is muggles, that they kind of just look at us all like, oh God, here she goes again, And it means that for the guys, it's a big risk getting involved, because at the end of the day, there's this, they're part of that group, and they come along and they trust me. and they have faith in what we're doing week in, out, week in, week in, week in, week in. We've had 85 men go through the programme now over the last 4 years, which might not seem a lot, but that's the idea. The idea is that we continue working with them for as long as we possibly can. And once they're in the group, they're never out. So even the guys who've left the prison now and who are on other sites, they know what we're doing. They know they belong, and it gives them a real sense of ownership and pride when they're able to talk about that. But also the men who are released, we get a huge amount of support still from them, and they will talk about how much it meant to them to be part of that. So I'm very proud of that part of what we do, as you can tell. Okay. So this guy here, I just thought this was a perfect image to show you of one of our guys from the visual arts programs. This is really what we're dealing with very often when we meet our chaps who come down to the art room. Very often they'll come down like that, quite angry and not really sure what they're going to find. There's a lot of rules everywhere in prison, there needs to be, but my art space, our art space, is a safe space. It's like this, you know. It's messy. Well, this is messy. It's like this in terms of there's happy, shiny people everywhere. You know, everyone's friendly. It's a warm space. Really, you know, we don't have a huge issue with stuff being taken and stolen and misused in our area, because the rule is we don't mess with the art room. We don't mess with what we've got here because it's so valuable, and everyone respects that. So everyone comes down and has a nice time and works really, really hard. So this guy, he's been in and out for years and years and years. He's quite a young fella. And he wrote that for me this week. I said, can you write something just to share with the group that I'm going to talk to? I have great hopes for him, really, really, really high hopes for him. That piece of work he made for his level 4 arts and graphic design, which is what we were delivering through North Tech, and that's the highest thing he's ever achieved in his life academically, but also it was one of the best things he's ever done for here and here. He unpacked a lot of stuff, and as a result he's getting some really good support now, and he's starting to be respected by officers and even the management team. They're hearing good things about him and what he's doing, and hopefully we're working quite hard to reconnect him with some of his whānau. This is one of he was one of our longest term guys on our programme. This work's massive, so it's up there, and out here. And it was part of an exhibition we did in Whangarei at the Jeff Wilson Gallery. It was the guy's first opportunity to participate in a professional art exhibition. So it wasn't something where we were doing it to cohort work elsewhere or raise funds for charity. This exhibition was about working with artists from outside the community, inside our community, and some of the arts tutors from North Tech and myself as well. And we created this exhibition idea where someone would make a piece of work, we all know this one, and then you pass an image on to somebody else and they respond to it. And this piece of work was what you saw as soon as you walked in. This young man has been in prison a very, very long time, and he came to my programme really not knowing who he was. He hadn't had any experience of mixing with people outside of corrections, probably for about 12 years. And we started having these wonderful, he joined Redemption Performing Arts as well, and we had these wonderful experiences where we introduced him to members of the public. And the first time we had a little gallery exhibition in the art room and a performance, and we invited all these people, and I left him talking about his work. He was just chatting away, and I walked away to go and talk to somebody else. And at the end of the day, he came and said to me, do you know how scared I was? That's the first time I've spoken to anybody outside of a uniform or people who come in and deliver like yourself in 12 years. I said, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. He said, I don't know how I did it, but I did it. And I said, well, that's the start. So then we spent the next 3 years working really hard on trying to break old core beliefs for him about everyone hates me. started working on, when he used to come down, just used to draw naked ladies and dragons, you know. I always say, look, guys, let's just try and stop drawing tits and dragons. Let's just look at some art. And, you know, you've got all this talent. Let's see where you can go with it. So it's about opening people up to different ways of making. And we work with so many different mediums. And I showed him how I worked with woodcuts. And he made that, and it was hours and hours of work, and that is him, but I believe he's not on site anymore, but I believe he's doing very well. This one is another long-serving, quite young person, and this one was in an exhibition at the Whangarei Art Museum, which was another experience that the guys, I mean, you know, I love to have my work in an art museum. You know, that's kind of like when you're up there. And we got invited to be in an exhibition for Habitat for Humanity. We do a lot of work for organisations up north, and we get invited to participate in so many different projects, and this one was great. So they were going to build houses inside the walls of the prison, which they have done, and they lift them out, and deserving families get them. So we always contribute to that with performance for handover of the house, but also making art to raise some of the money to build the houses. So this sold at auction for $5,200, and I was at the auction, and you know, when it started going, I was like, do they really think this is a Banksy or something? And I'm looking around thinking, it doesn't say Banksy anywhere on it. But this young man, when I started working with him, he just worked solely with portraiture, and he was doing beautiful airbrush work, which he'd been taught by another guy in the unit. And he didn't come to art because he was quite straight, and he just didn't think that was his thing. And I got involved with working with him, and he started coming to art, and God, he absolutely loves art. And I started talking to him about concepts and context of work, and as a result, he was able to start creating work like this. And he has had work all over the place. Just so many people really connect with his work. I couldn't be prouder, actually, of him. When I talk about it, seeing his progress through the system is quite incredible. And he has done a business studies course, team leadership course, his arts level 4, and he's now moved on to another site and is doing his rehabilitative programs. And I believe when he gets out, he's got a really good future ahead of him. That's one of the things we do. We work with other agencies who deliver business studies, and I also have a mentoring program. We kind of just do everything we can within the arts world, or creative industries, to prepare the men for a pathway out of the gate through the arts. It's not an easy thing to do, but it's possible, you know.
Just a couple of minutes.
Right. Sorry guys, I've gone on too much. Okay, so this is a collaborative, we do a lot of collaborative work, so this is like a, I'm going to give up on that. Can you still hear me?
Good.
All right, okay. And so we wanted to create an asylum because it is a little bit crazy in that place, and I said, you can each have a room. So we worked with Blue Pen, and they each created one of their own rooms. Oh. That's our Redemption Arts group when we were Shakespeare Behind Bars. So that's us back in 2016 when we won an award on site for leadership in the arts. And that's part of our performance currently with our little homemade wreath there. And the guys are just ending the performance at that point. I so wish I could show you what we do, but we just can't. We've got to protect the community and them. And that's me and Calvin Davis last year in 2018 when I won 2 awards at Parliament, which was wonderful, as recognition for what myself and my team and the guys do. And that's the thing I just want to make very clear, you know, that I can talk about I do this, but really everything I do, as you know, wouldn't be possible without the incredible men who participate in my programs on site and who've taken such ownership of them. I think that's it. Oh, there's some more work. At the moment, just to finish off, our projects that we're working on at the moment are, we're doing murals for a police station in Koa, and that's about making links with people that the men usually don't have very good relationships with. So we're trying to forge better relationships with the police, which will help with their kids as well, with better relationships with the police. We're putting artwork into Kaikui, into the courthouse, to try and make that a better space for whānau, victims of crime, and the community to experience what the men do, but also to build, again, more feelings of trust and connection. We're working on projects with Mid-North Hospice, and we have an exhibition happening at Studio One in the first week of October, which is around mental health. So the guys are very keen to do a lot of work around mental health, so we're going to be putting an exhibition into there which talks about mental health in corrections, but the men have a lot of aspirations for trying to help as well outside. So I think they're working on the idea of putting together a play that can be packaged up and then sent out to other people in the community to actually put on. Because the way they see it is if these big badasses can do it, then anybody can do it. And I think that's it. Oh, that's me. Yeah, that's one of my little funny installations I made with the fellas in the art room. Okay, right, thank you very much.
About 9 o'clock, and many of you will have to shoot off to work, but just wondering if there's any questions for the amazing Beth.
Yeah, I was just curious to know if your program has gone to other parts of New Zealand.
No, there are arts programs operating in different facilities, but none of as sort of big as my one. We've got the benchmark of it going, but I would like to take it elsewhere, but I know that there's a good program in Parry at the moment, and that currently down in the South Island there's some amazing stuff happening, which is really, really great.
Any other questions?
Some of the men that are released, are they allowed to come back in and talk to some of the other inmates that are still there?
It's something we'd love for them to be able to do. It's not as easy as you'd think. It's a little bit harder. I think there has to be a stand down period once you've been released, but also for them, you know, it's a bit of a trigger going back inside too quickly, so it would have to be a really heavily supported process.
Any more questions?
Has there been, in terms of tracking the men who've been through your program, in terms of impact on recidivist rates, has there been any tracking around?
There's going to be a study done quite soon. There's a research project happening, but also I keep an eye on what's going on, and our guys from our program don't come back through that much. When they do, we immediately bring them back. As soon as I can, I bring them straight back in, and we give them the whole group would give them a bit of a talking to, and then we say, look, it's okay, let's work on how we can support you back out again. But with redemption, performing arts really quite low. You know, there are people who are out there who are quite well known in the art world now who are doing really, really well. Yeah, I don't know if I'm allowed to mention names. Okay.
Any other questions?
How much trouble do you have convincing people that they have creative ability?
Not that much. It's not that hard. You know, when you think that most guys who come to prison are like most creative people. You know, they're some of the most highly creative people on the planet. So when they come in, very often they've got so much time on their hands doing nothing. They'll have a piece of paper and a pencil or a ballpoint pen. So very often art is the first go-to they have in their downtime when they're sat with nothing to do, whether it's doodling. You know, obviously there are a lot of guys in there who have had previous experience in the arts anyway, which is quite surprising to some people, but there are a lot. So I would say Not that hard actually, no, not with the visual arts. I think with the performing arts, that's the hardest one because communication is very often the tool that they lose the quickest, the ability to communicate effectively.
Back there.
It sounds like your experience has been really overwhelmingly positive with all of the inmates, but I can imagine that there's times that you maybe haven't felt safe or it's actually been quite a lot to deal with, and do you get the right support for that kind of thing through the prison?
There's times for everybody. I think in any job where you do feel, I could be probably working in an office and something could happen that can throw you off. Because I know the environment and what I'm dealing with, it doesn't really happen that often. I think for newer staff probably, but I've been there a while and you do get very experienced and everybody tends to know who you are and you build that level of respect so people don't tend to mess with you. But in terms of support, really, there is a support program you can use through corrections called EAP. I haven't had to access it yet, but I'm lucky. I've got 2 really great kids. And I've got good friends, so I tend to be able to not offload my things that happen at work because it's very confidential, but I have that love and support and care there for me. Yeah.
One last question, Kelly.
I'm curious about how important you think the prisoners find the exhibitions or the actual performances. A lot of the research around creativity and wellness seems to suggest that it's more about the process of creating rather than the
And it
product.
is.
Is that what you found?
Yeah, for me, everything we do is about the process. So that's the thing, when people look at the performances we do, for some people they see that as the outcome, but that isn't for me. When the 28th Model Battalion play, for example, it took us 1.5 years to get where we were with it. And that process was had involved a lot of laughter, a lot of crying, a lot of having to unpack a lot of issues around cultural protocols, getting things right. That was the thing that was important. And again, with the making, that's what I always say to the guys, I'm less concerned about the end of it, but other people are concerned with that. But for us, it's about the process and why we're doing it. What you are personally getting out of, and that for me, that's what making's about anyway. Very often I make work. Most of my work ends up in the bin, because it's the process of making, and I intend to make, and then it's like, there's nothing left, But it was the process of actually doing that is the important thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. It'll be past 9 o'clock now, so I just want to say thank you so much
you.
for sharing your story, and just thank you for the work that you've done.
Thank you very much.